The name Cassius Clay is most widely known as the birth name of legendary boxer Muhammad Ali. Ali took his new name in 1962 and announced he would no longer answer to what he called his slave name. The move would, ironically, establish his image as a fearless crusader for civil rights and equality. Why ironically? Well, because the original Cassius Clay was actually a total badass who spent his whole life fighting slavery. Today, we're going to make the case for why abolitionist Cassius Clay was the most metal politician in American history. But before we get into it, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. And then, if you really want to make our day, leave a comment and let us know what famous historical badasses you would like to hear about. So let's talk about the man named Clay. Cassius Clay was a famously tough abolitionist politician who served in the Kentucky House of Representatives in the mid-1800s. How tough? Well, his nickname was the Lion of Whitehall, Whitehall being the name of the estate he grew up on, and a lion being a dangerous animal prone to killing things. Clay was a highly proficient dueler and legendary fighter. Good thing, too. Being a vocal advocate for the abolition of slavery in 1840s Kentucky could be extremely hazardous to one's health. Cassius Clay was born to a prominent slave-owning Kentucky family. After attending a speech by the famous abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison at Yale, he turned passionately anti-slavery and became an outspoken political activist. Knowing the power of the press, he founded an anti-slavery newspaper called the True American. In 1840s Kentucky, this was about the most politically radical thing a person could do. Clay knew it too, reportedly bragging that he was the first to beard the monster in his den. Reactions to his paper ranged from quiet admiration to murderous rage. More tellingly, once Clay inherited the slaves his father owned, he freed them. The financial loss to his family was $40,000, which would be roughly the equivalent of about $1.2 million in present-day amounts. You would think this sort of thing might make him some enemies, and it did. Clay took pride in his anti-slavery work and the fact that his newspaper riled up his neighbors. He anticipated some backlash and often got it. He once even received a death threat literally written in blood. Not being the kind of guy to run away from a fight, he prepared the offices of the True American accordingly. This entailed defensive measures like reinforcing the street entrance with an iron sheet. It also included offensive measures like installing 2 giant cannons loaded with nails and musket balls at the top of the stairs. He also stocked the office with rifles and pistols. You're probably guessing those are for the staff to defend themselves with. But you'd be wrong. Clay wasn't going to put his people in any more danger than they had to be in. For his employees, he installed an escape hatch in the roof. The plan was that they would make their way out of the building while Clay held off the attackers, and then he would blow the building up with explosives. So, did it all work? Well, the office was attacked a few times, but never bad enough so that Clay had to use the full defensive system. Maybe word got around that he was just waiting for someone to try. While he had received death threats from anti-abolitionists for years, it wasn't until 1843 that his crusades actually made him a target for assassination. Clay's enemies hired an enforcer named Sam Brown to shoot him during a public debate. They hoped this would send a message to other abolitionists. Unfortunately for them, things didn't exactly go as they had planned. Brown shot Clay. That part went fine. After that, things went off the rails. Because instead of laying down to meet his maker, Clay pulled out a Bowie knife and chased after Brown. Fighting his way through Brown's allies, with a bullet still in his chest, mind you, Clay finally caught up to his would-be assassin and stabbed him. If you think that put an end to the situation, then you don't know Cassius Clay, because that was just the beginning. Clay proceeded to gouge out Brown's eye, cut off his nose, and then one of his ears. Surely, that must have ended it, right? No. Clay's finishing move was to pick up the wounded Brown and toss him over a wall and down an embankment. As you might imagine, the whole affair sent a slightly different message than the anti-abolitionists had intended. You would think after what happened to Sam Brown, no one would be dumb enough to try and kill Clay again, but you'd be wrong. For example, after finishing an anti-slavery speech one night in Kentucky, Clay was confronted by the sons of a local pro-slavery politician. While no one knows whether it was a planned attack or a heat-of-the-moment eruption, the brothers went after him. There was a struggle. One of the attackers tried to shoot Clay, but the gun misfired. Then Clay's Bowie knife got loose and one of the brothers got a hold of it. They repeatedly gashed Clay, because that's usually enough to kill a man. But as previously established, Clay was really hard to kill. Like a hero in an action movie, Clay shook off his wounds, wrested his knife back from his attackers, and chased after them. Most of them, anyway. He caught up with the ringleader and stabbed the guy to the afterlife before finally collapsing himself. The repeated attempts on his life didn't dissuade Clay from speaking out against slavery at all. One of the reasons Clay was so hard to scare may be that he had already seen war firsthand and survived some close calls. For example, during the Mexican-American War, he served as a captain for a company of Kentucky volunteer soldiers that was quickly captured by the enemy. Some of the men managed to escape, and the guards decided to slay the rest of the prisoners in retribution. As the ranking man on the scene, Clay is reported to have asked his jailers to spare the soldiers and kill only himself and the other officers. The guards were so impressed by his courage, they spared everyone. When it came to settling grievances, Cassius Clay was a man of his era, and his era was the era of the duel. This made him especially dangerous since he had a reputation for issuing challenges over just about anything, from personal insults to trivial arguments. A colleague once said, Clay would fight the wind did it blow from the south side when he wanted it to blow from the north. Many of these challenges led to nothing, but many led to actual duels. While there's no way to know today how many people Clay really took out, rumors and stories of the era credit him with killing more people in duels than anyone else in America. Imagine being so fearsome that your enemies would literally rather take their own lives than face you. Cassius Clay didn't have to imagine. In 1833, while Clay was at law school, he became involved with a woman named Mary Jane Warfield. One of her exes, John DeClary, sent a letter making all sorts of accusations about Clay. Predictably, Clay got a hold of the letter and proceeded to beat DeClary with a hickory stick. In an effort to save face, DeClary challenged Clay to a duel. However, Clay's reputation for dueling being what it was, DeClary decided to schedule the fight for the same day as Clay's wedding. The gambit worked, and Clay was unable to show up for the duel. Unfortunately, DeClary wasn't the type of guy to leave well enough alone, and he told people Clay was a coward who was afraid to face him. As you might have guessed, this prompted Clay to demand a new duel. Clay showed up for that one the following day to learn that rather than face him, DeClary had opened up his own wrists. In 1899, Clay's ex-wife, Dora, married a man named Riley Brock. Clay suspected Brock of abusing Dora, and over time came to suspect Brock was planning to rob Whitehall itself. His instincts were correct. Along with two accomplices, Brock attempted to rob Clay's ancestral home. While no one knows precisely what happened that night, the outcome is clear. Police found one of the burglars dead of a gunshot wound, another dead of a knife wound, and Brock himself had fled the scene completely. Clay foiled the crime and took out two of the three criminals. Not bad for a guy who was 89 years old. The Republican nominee for the presidential election of 1860 was Abraham Lincoln, and Cassius Clay, already a prominent figure in the abolitionist movement, received a large percentage of votes for vice president. The VP nod ultimately went to another man, but Clay would serve a number of roles during Lincoln's administration, including those of ambassador and general. However, while he considered Lincoln a friend, Clay eventually resigned over the president's failure to declare emancipation for the slaves. Much to Lincoln's annoyance, Clay would continue to lobby him on the issue, and in 1863, he finally declared emancipation. Always eager to put his money where his mouth was, Clay donated land for the creation of Berea College, a school that would accept all races and genders. Classes were still segregated in accordance with the law of the time, but the school's very existence was extremely unusual in the South during the period. Most incredible of all, it was tuition-free. Berea College is one of the important parts of Clay's legacy. It still exists today, still charges nothing for tuition, and still uses the motto he gave it nearly 200 years ago: God has made of one blood all people of the earth. Feeling how he did about slavery, Clay was only too happy to get involved with the Civil War. Just weeks after the South seceded, Clay organized a corps of 300 volunteers into the Strangers Guard, which he used to protect the White House. Some believe the Guard's creation to be a strategically wise precaution for protecting the as-of-yet unguarded seat of American government. Others suspected Clay just coveted the presidency and enjoyed being at the White House. Whatever the truth, the Strangers Guard never saw battle. Cassius Clay was a fearless anti-slavery warrior in a slave state. He fought in a war, routinely engaged in duels and fights, and had repeated attempts made on his life. So you'd be surprised to hear that Cassius Clay finally died at age 92 of natural causes. This contradiction is pretty typical of Clay and his life. He was a man who could be righteous and charismatic as easily as he could be vicious and cruel. He embodied the volatile, contradictory spirit of his age and was, without a doubt, the most metal politician in American history. Can you think of an American politician who was more metal than Cassius Clay? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.